Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Arrow as well as the latest episode of Black Lightning. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Arrow, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Black Lightning. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Arrow. A lot of interesting things to kind of break down about this. I really like that we're seeing them kind of joining the SCPD in a more official capacity, and we're seeing them kind of like having to adjust because like obviously Oliver's training a little bit, Renee's putting the gun together so fast, and you see Felicity getting so bothered because it's like I have to watch you go about things the legal and slow way. It's disgusting. And then you have like tactics being run, and you almost have like Diggle falling asleep like, oh yeah, right, yeah. And it's so interesting because they've been at this for so long. I mean, they're kind of pros at this whole thing, but now they kind of have to conform to what the SCPD has to say. In particular, Pollard wants it like this just because also they can't wear their costumes, can't even use their weapons, so they're not even, going at full efficiency, And it's so interesting because for Oliver, his reasonings behind this is kind of what's brought up before. It's like, we need to do stuff in the light. We don't need to be hiding in the shadows, kind of running things like the way we did before, because we got to do this for the sake of our baby. But because of that, he is a lot more impatient. He kind of wants things to work out so they can clean up the city. But then it's kind of like complications because it's like them working with the SCPD doesn't really gel well because Oliver ends up blowing up like the container of like the poison and bullets, so they have no evidence. But to be fair, it kind of makes sense because I guess it's like if he didn't do that, the dude would have just had more and more ammo to shoot at people. Also, Oliver didn't have his arrows that kind of help disable the dudes, or there's that, but at the same time it's like, yeah, you kind of messed up on that front. But also Oliver was suggesting like, hey, we need to do it like this, kind of cover a lot of the gaps, kind of don't be big teams, like if we're smaller, not just two groups, like if we're smaller we can just like move around and stuff. But that blows up in their face. Turns an even harsher turn once Oliver kind of goes out on his own, working with Felicity and trying to like bring in the guy behind all of this, Midas, by themselves, kind of going the more OG Team Arrow route of just kind of like beating, not beating, but coercing a confession out of him. This all kind of causes a problem for Dinah because Dinah's torn between two places. Like for her, it's like she's got to be, Captain Drake, but she's also the Black Canary, and and so it leaves this complicated situation of like which side does she have to choose. And it seems like for her it's almost like I have to choose a side. I just can't play the fences anymore because she wanted to represent both sides. She was the one to kind of bring the balance of bringing the SCPD and Team Arrow together. She represented both sides as well. But for her, the complicated thing is, for one, she doesn't have her power. Her powers are very messed up. Like anytime she tries to use her powers, she feels like it's like knives in her throat, like it's calls damage. Like it's there to the point she could summon it up, but it would end up with her probably making things even worse. But the fact that she hasn't even attempted it in the future must mean that it just never came back, or maybe she was just too, like whatever it is, like if she ever does it, it would probably have to be a one shot. Like if she ever did it again, like, and that might be something that ends up coming up in the future. Like I mean that literally in the future, not just in the future. You get what I'm trying to say. But like it might be a situation where she has to call upon one last canary cry, and it ends up completely shattering her situation and making it so she can never do it anymore, like even attempt to do it, So that's interesting. But that for her kind of made her feel like, well, I can't be the Black Canary anymore without my cry, which Renee was like, are you kidding me? You're like, you don't need that. I mean, you've got the skills. You don't need the canary cry. Let's not forget, Laura was doing the whole Black Canary thing even before she got the device that gave her the ability to do canary cry, So we're talking Earth 1 Laurel, not Black Siren, Earth 2 Laurel. But, because it's kind of interesting because you almost have like Dinah having this identity crisis because she's caught between her loyalty to the SCPD because it's kind of her job and everything, but also her loyalty to Team Arrow because that's her team and that's her family. And so she feels, a little conflicted because for her it's like she felt like she had no other place to turn to because it's like if things don't work out with the SCPD, if she ended up getting fired or whatever, because it would be her job because she literally stuck her neck out for the team to kind of make all this stuff happen, she would lose her job and she'd have no place. She felt like, I can't go back to Team Arrow because I can't be a part of the team because I'll be useless. But it's like, no, like you've shown like even without your canary cry, you're still a capable fighter and crime fighter. I mean, everyone else, Oliver doesn't have any powers and stuff like that. But I guess for her, it's just kind of, she feels like without it, it's kind of like, how can I be the canary? But it's like, your canary cry isn't what makes you the canary. It's the fact is that you're this symbol that always stands up to do what's right, no matter the consequences of what Renee was telling her. And it was I like that, It was a situation where everyone kind of learned from it, because even John came to, Oliver and Felicity are like, we'll handle things our own way, even telling him about the baby, because they did have the whole conversation of like, oh, let's not tell anyone, because she doesn't want people kind of treating her a little differently and worried about the baby and stuff like that. But what I thought was kind of interesting was like, John kind of set them straight, because it's like, oh, so you want to go about things, okay, normally I have your back on this, that, but it's like, if we go about things this route, Team Arrow thing again, we're just going to repeat the same mistakes, because the city isn't any better off the way, because us doing it the way we did for years didn't make anything better. It almost feels like there wasn't that much of an impact. But if we do this, we work with the SCPD, if we find a balance between doing things their way and our way, kind of modifying things, then we can make a big difference. Which that in itself is kind of interesting, considering the fact is we know in the future the SCPD is super against vigilantes. And even in the process of everything going down this episode, they ended up taking down VIDS. The fact is that even Dino was like, Pollard was in the middle of signing an anti-vigilante thing. Something obviously must have went down to kind of change her mind, change her tune. I even love the fact is that it's like, oh yeah, we're like a subsection of the SCPD. We're still working with them, but we're kind of a special, vigilante unit. And like Renee being like, so we're kind of like the Black Ops of the SCPD. He's like, now that's cool. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing, Also, didn't realize and correlate in my head. I guess this was the first episode that hinted towards it, but the system that Felicity's working on present day, because, you have John being like, it's going to be something impressive, I know it. It's the same system that Renee is using. I forgot what was it called. Was it called Eagle Eye? I think I'm confusing that with the movie, literally, the Shia LaBeouf movie Eagle Eye, but it's that system that they used in the future. That's the system that she made. I didn't correlate that to being like something she made. I wondered if most people know that, or is that kind of like a well-kept secret or something like that? Because I guess you wouldn't want people knowing that Felicity Smoke was behind that because of her connection to vigilantes and stuff like that. I don't know. Just makes you wonder, like, how the hell did Renee get his hands on it? Like, I guess maybe Felicity made it public knowledge. Maybe it got stolen from her. I don't know. Also, side note, we got the whole conversation about naming in this episode, and obviously the Mia situation. It did not correlate in my head until Oliver pointed it out. It's like Mia, and Felicity was like short for Myra, and I'm like, oh, I would have never pieced that together. I mean, it makes sense. It's still one. I would have never even pieced that together. That was like, a naming convention because of your mom. I thought that was it didn't even click in my head. I guess I just assumed Felicity's the one that had come up with the name Mia. I didn't even think but that's interesting, Which is still kind of be a little hard considering the fact is it's like, well, let's not also forget like the complicated relationship you have and realizing like not only were your dad kind of scummy about the whole Emiko situation, your mom was kind of scummy about it too. So that's kind of a complicated thing in its own right. But nevertheless, it is nice to kind of see Team Arrow kind of back at, working together. And it's once again, it's so trippy because not only it's like, at first it's crazy seeing Oliver working with the police. Now you see full-blown Team Arrow. But I think now we'll see collaboration, sure, but it probably won't be to the extent. It's so interesting. In the grand scheme of things, it makes sense. I don't even think I put that comparison together. The whole aspect of like, oh yeah, Green Arrow working with the police. It's like, that's, once again, it's the thing, like I said, that always gets brought up, like this show is supposed to kind of be like Batman in certain regard. And it's like, well, let's not forget, Batman has this relationship with the police. I mean, more so well, to be fair, Oliver's always had his relationship with the police. And I guess, I never thought about that. I guess his relationship with Lance, even though it's complicated, was kind of supposed to be resemblant of like Batman and Gordon. I didn't even think about that till now. Jeez, it's been somewhat. Oh, because him and Lance got on good terms around season 2 or so, I'd say. So probably like, it took me like 5 or 6 years to learn that and kind of piece that together. It's like, geez, that's interesting. Well, we also learned, for one, turns out Turner knows about who, because I was wondering, because Laura gets a call and everything. I'm like, who does she know in jail? Like, oh, what's this all about? It's something shady. It's like, no, Turner called her because it's all about the whole getting him out thing. But it's also, he's the one that saw who killed Ricardo Diaz. I'm like, yo! And then the whole thing of like, let me see my son, which Laura kind of got that set up. And it's like, oh, Connor, you're my little Hulk. I'm like, okay. So this right here kind of confused me. That's what I've been kind of wondering the entire time. It's like, okay, is Star City 2049 the episode from season 1 of Legends of Tomorrow, which I constantly kept referencing? Is that even continuous anymore? Like, did that get retconned in this? Because something I was just thinking about this time that I hadn't even thought about before. It's like, well, let's not forget Nora's here too. So she changed time, probably not just on a flash. They probably might not have made a point of it, but it's like she probably affected the future in Star City as well, like her already changing time and stuff like that. So, you know, we probably don't know the grand effects of everything that's going down with that, like, you know, how things are moving. But that's what I was kind of like, I don't know. Like I said, it might just be a situation of like, that's not continuity, because Connor Hawk in season 1, that was John Jr. And I wasn't wrong when I heard that last episode of like, oh, he had Diggle, like he was saying like, oh, Connor was like, oh yeah, John adopted me. And it's like, okay. So, is there a John Jr. running around using the name Connor Hawk? Is he using that name because Connor is the name? But I thought, I'm so confused because I don't know if that's supposed to be the same character. And like I said, just things have changed and they just retconned a lot of that stuff. I don't know, because like I know that, you know, because it's like they have not shown like what was once Palmer Tech, which was formerly, you know, Queen Consolidation. It was like Smoke, like eventually saying that, you know, Felicity eventually got the building back, that company back, but she never has and still hasn't. So it's like, and the fact is, there's no talk of Oliver, even though we know he's alive in 2049, except he's got to make it seem like he was dead. So that makes me think like a lot of that's been retconned. So I didn't realize that potential. I don't know. Like I said, not unless that's a Nora thing, but I think sitting here finally accepting it, I'm like, no, that's probably them retconning that episode in certain regards. I mean, a lot of the continuity was still there because it's like, oh, John Jr., so that was already in line with a Flashpoint continuity. So that's why I'm kind of confused in that regard. But nevertheless, either way, it turns out that's Turner's son, which sadly means that something happened to Turner, for the fact is that John ended up adopting him and looking after him. I wonder what exactly went down in that regard. I guess, you know, Turner felt like he can trust people from Team Arrow just because it's, well, maybe Oliver wasn't around at that time and it's like John was kind of like the next best thing, because it's like, the fact is you're someone that Oliver trusts, so I'll trust you, which is so interesting. Once again, the enemies turn to allies type of situation. I mean, to be fair, look at Laurel. So that's it situation. But what was interesting is like, yeah, it was straight up Emiko, which I'm like, I didn't expect it to be Emiko herself. I mean, I'm not surprised. Dante, it's like, well, we now know that Dante and Emiko have a connection, and it's like, I guess Emiko's kind of like his assassin. Like, I guess she kind of handles like the wet work, which is interesting considering the fact that she isn't around killing other people, but I guess that's the whole point. Like, she's kind of playing, which is weird to say. I'm about to say she's playing hard to get. That's weird to say when it comes to her brother and everything. I don't mean to phrase it like that, but I think the whole point is to be like, oh, like, I'll have issues with you, so like he'll try his hardest to try and mend that relationship and create that relationship, leaving him vulnerable and easy for them to kind of control and use or whatever they're up to. But Laurel, interestingly enough, confronts Emiko, and it's like, oh, how are they going to feel about you not really being a hero, pretending to be one? Oh, it's going to make family dinners very awkward, which I will admit is funny and ironic coming from Laurel, considering the fact is Laurel, Black Siren, and even Emiko is like, oh, you think they'll really listen to you over me, Black Siren? And it's like, yeah, you have a sketchy past and stuff like that. And that was kind of the point. I was like, let's not forget all the duplicitous stuff you were up to in season 6, all the manipulation in that regard. It's like, yeah, but to be fair, losing Quentin changed that, you know. And, you know, she's a very different person now. Like, Oliver would probably be hesitant to believe her and listen to her just because it's like, well, for one, he's going to listen to his sister, like, considering her tragic past and everything with her mom. And just the fact of the matter is, it's his sister. He's trying to have a relationship with her. He'd probably take her side. Even though him and Laura are in a good place, he'd probably listen. But I think things will be... Because another thing, too, is like, you take Felicity. Felicity and Laura are besties kind of now. So I was like, yeah, I think she'd listen. But I think it's a situation of... They'd probably do something to discredit Laurel. To be fair, they still don't know that Turner is her inside source, but something might end up happening to Turner, which might involve the whole, you know, Connor situation. Maybe they try and shut him up or something like that. Or maybe they threaten his son, and so Turner has no choice but to lie and say, like, oh yeah, Laurel's crazy or something like that. I don't know. It's just not going to be that simple. I think, but it might not just be that. It might be Laurel's own insecurities, like her attempt to try and, like, get evidence to prove that Emiko is a liar might backfire on her and just turn the team, or turn Oliver in particular, more against her. Because for her, it's probably going to be like, no matter how much she's grown in this time that Oliver's been away, it doesn't, because Oliver still looked at her the same way when he was still in prison, but to be fair, his perspective on her has changed. Once again, things are a bit awkward, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see what ends up happening in that regard. Once again, I'm so curious to find out about this Dante situation and Emiko. Like, I guess it's just kind of like Oliver got his training on Lian Yu and stuff like that. Obviously, once again, I guess another example would be like the whole Sarah situation, training with the League of Assassins. I think that's probably like a more adept situation. Well, no, I think the more correct one would be like Emiko's situation is very similar to Malcolm Merlin, because Merlin trained with the League of Assassins and everything because he wanted revenge. He wanted to have the strength to get revenge, and that's what Emiko did. She joined this group, met up with them, they found her. I guess they saw the potential, the rage that was burning underneath, and so they trained her and turned her into a weapon to do what Dante needs in that regard. Because I guess it's like, we're your family, which I'm curious to see what that ends up being about, because I'm sure it goes beyond just Dante. There's probably like, I'm assuming that group might also include the longbow hunters, because they're the ones that hired them out for Diaz. So, and also, yeah, it turns out Diaz is dead. I was wondering about that too. Like, I was like, oh yeah, could he pretend I felt he was dead, but I was like, maybe there's a chance he just comes back burnt. It's like, no, he's super dead. And it's like, yeah, he was a loose end that needed to be taken care of. I'm curious about that with Emiko, like, because like I said, up till now, she hadn't killed people, but once again, I'm like, yeah, that's probably part of the ploy to get Oliver to lower his guard, thinking like, oh no, you're the good Green Arrow and stuff like that. So it's putting up this false perception of you. All the while, we're having the future situation where we have Mia and William trying to get a cassette, William getting played. I love William making that line of like, oh, I'm surprised, the way she's getting all angry about that dude Felix and everything, and he's like, I'm surprised you didn't say, Felix, you have failed this city. And she's like, why? That's a dumb thing to say. It's like, well, that's the thing our dad used to say. She's like, oh, because I love it, because it's poking fun at it a little bit, because I think if even, it's just a little thing, because like, this is what, Oliver says, and it's just, because I think it also plays into the fact is of like, your kids are always going to think the things you did and say were stupid. It's like, that's so uncool, that's stupid. It's like, oh wow, my dad said that, how uncool, how old of him, or something like that. I think that's kind of the one way to look at it. But it's also because she didn't realize that's what their dad had said. So, but working together, they were able to get the cassette. Turns out the message was like, I'm sorry I kept you two separate, but it was for your own protection. From what exactly, we still don't know. Like, once again, it's like, because William's under the impression that like they didn't contact him in all those years, like maybe because William was still so upset at the time, so he didn't really want to listen to him. It's like you look at things very differently. Like when you're older, you might because of such a crazy time, he might look back at it in a different light than he currently does. Maybe at the time he was like, oh, they didn't call me, but in reality it's like, oh, they did, but I was still kind of bothered and angry by them, and I just didn't want to really listen or talk, even though I said we were going to talk. That's, like I said, not unless that was just on his grandparents' side of things too, but it still doesn't change the fact it's like all those years later, you still never got in contact with me. But once again, I guess that has to deal with protecting the city. Well, protecting the city, sure, but also like protecting them. Why would them being together be an issue? Why leave Mia to grow up in Star City? Her away to be with William wherever he was, I don't know. But it also seems like Felicity is telling them to go to the Glades. Well, she's telling the team to get sent to the Glades and telling William and Mia not to find her. But it's like, nah, they're kids. It's like they're yours and Oliver's kids. Like, having two parents like you, stubborn as hell like you two, no way they're going to listen. It's crazy that you would even think that they would. So the point is to go to the Glades. So I think now we're going to get a better look at the Glades and kind of see how things kind of go down. But I mean, the Glades is going to be dangerous territory. The whole anti-vigilante situation, it's not going to be pretty. But to be fair, it's a whole complicated thing of like, oh yeah, there's the whole Renee thing too. Which is interesting, just considering where Renee is right now in comparison to Dinah. Like, Dinah kind of balancing both worlds, and it seems like Renee completely abandons the vigilante world to kind of be in the whole, like, looking out for the Glade situation, because he doesn't care about the rest of Star City. Once again, the whole conversation is, what exactly went down that led to that, don't know. Either way, I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. And now moving on to this week's episode of Black Lightning. So, a lot of interesting things went down in this episode. So let's break some things down. First and foremost, obviously you have, Jeff being like, yeah, he wish he could talk, his girls out of doing all this stuff, but he knows that sooner or later, obviously they're going to do stuff anyway, because much like him, they're very stubborn too. So it's like, okay, but if we're going to do this whole superhero thing, the fact of the matter is we're going to lay down some groundwork, because Lynn actually convinced him, like, this is the best way, rather than trying to be kind of the overbearing father who's just trying to protect his daughters all the time and just kind of takes a lot of this stuff. It's like, rather than that, kind of go about being a father in a different way of like looking at this rather than like a father, trying to stop his daughters from doing this dangerous stuff, rather work with them because they're going to do it behind your back regardless. But it's interesting, the 3 rules he actually comes up with. The moment he was saying them, at the very least 2 of them, you're like, oh, I could see either one of them breaking that. But it's interesting because like, what I was thinking was like, when you actually sit here and think about it, like all those rules, each one of them could end up breaking it. Like I could totally see Jeff breaking the first rule of like, well, it's actually the second rule. Because the first rule is the whole, like, don't tell anybody who we really are. I can see Anissa kind of breaking that just because I figured because of the Grace situation, so there's that. But I could definitely see Jeff doing the whole, like, oh, going by yourself thing. But to be fair, that's something I feel like Anissa could end up breaking that rule too. Jennifer will as well. I mean, to be fair, she literally does it later on. She breaks that and tries to break rule number 3. But rule number 3 being, like, not to kill anyone, that's the big one. And obviously Jennifer has the biggest issue with that, because the thing is, Jennifer and Anissa have kind of had a tendency lately to kind of go off doing things on their own, and it's like, you're very brash. The fact of the matter is, especially in Anissa's case, because it's like, yeah, you kind of think you're hot shit and stuff like that, you wearing your suit and everything makes you think, when he was saying that, like, wearing your suit makes you feel like you have the license to do whatever you want, I'm assuming he was referencing her as when she's in her black hood stealing and stuff like that, because she doesn't do that stuff as Thunder, because Thunder represents the good side of the community. If she was out there doing stuff like that, then she's as Thunder, she's held to a higher standard because she's a superhero. But she, under the black hood and everything, it's like, oh no, I can do whatever the hell I want to a certain extent. Obviously she still does good, but she skirts the lines a lot more than she would as Thunder. But they can both be very rash, and I think they have a hard time listening to their dad. I mean, he's been doing this a lot longer than you. Obviously he took like a 9-year break, but he's still a lot more of a veteran at this than you guys are. But Jennifer's still bringing up the whole thing of like Tobias is better off dead. But I think for her, and it's something that I don't think Jeff has really brought up to her, of like what it means to kill somebody. Like, the fact of the matter is, that's something you don't just, because, could we as the audience would know that, because, like, Oliver carries that with him in every day, all the people he's killed. That's something that haunts you. That weight never goes away. Those ghosts are always there to carry you. And, like, no matter, even in a moment, revenge won't, and it's something, Jeff said, is like, revenge won't bring Khalil back. It's not going to make anything better. You think it's going to make you feel better, but it won't. And it's actually interesting because I didn't put 2 and 2 together to even think about it, because it's like, oh yeah, Lala's trying to kill Tobias, and it's so is Jennifer, both for the same reason. They both think it's going to fill some hole in their heart because like Tobias did them wrong in some shape or form. Lala feels like Tobias is the reason why he went down the path that he did, ended up hurting all the people that he did, killing all the people he did, which obviously last episode we learned that included Earl. And Jennifer wants to get revenge for Khalil. But revenge is a very slippery slope, because like even when you get it, it doesn't fill that hole in your heart. It just leaves you empty, because once you've gotten revenge, you've got nothing to hold on to, That anger is all that kind of keeps you going in certain regards, And it's so sad because you see Jeff look at Jennifer, and when he sees Jennifer, he sees like Jennifer even younger, and just, I think for him, he wishes he could go back to those days, because thinking back to those moments, he would have never thought that they'd be here where his little girl is dressing up in a suit. Side note, I didn't piece that together that the little girl was Jennifer. I guess in my head I assumed that was Anissa. I don't know. I guess in my head I think Jennifer's younger than what she actually is, but it's like, no, that was like Jennifer that found him when he was bleeding. That was what set it in motion for Lynn to be like, you need to stop this, and he agreed and stuff like that, because Jennifer walking in on him like that. But I could have sworn that was Anissa. I didn't realize that was Jennifer. Either way, it is a whole conversation of like, because, Jeff's having a hard time, him and Lynn having to find a way to figure this out because no other parent is currently going through this. I mean, I guess you could make the argument, technically, Barry and Iris are going through the same situation. At least they've got one on their hand. Not so much the case in Jeff and Lynn's case. They've got two to deal with, so... But like I said, they are, in the process of figuring things out. Like I said, there's no written books on this and stuff like that. What I also thought was kind of interesting, obviously there's a whole Odell constantly watching the family and stuff like that. Still not 100% sure what he's planning because he doesn't want the ASA to know about what he's up to. So it's got to be for his own personal vendetta. I don't know what that is exactly, what he's planning, because it seems like he's trying to weaponize metahumans, but he's not doing it because he could easily, and I feel like he's worming his way to it, the whole potentially blackmailing Black Lightning and Thunder. It's I'm gonna force you to, I'm gonna reveal your identities if you don't do what I ask you to do, because he kind of goes towards Lynn near the end of the episode, and he's like, oh, the neighborhood's lucky, Freeland's lucky to have Black Lightning and Thunder. Yeah, and Lynn's like, yeah, and he's like, well, good night. And it's like, you're rubbing it in her face. She doesn't know that but still, it begs the question, why? It seems like he's getting ready to use that information, but he hasn't used it now. Because it's actually interesting, because this kind of lends itself into the whole Wendy situation. Because obviously Wendy, she hasn't lived a life for the past 30 years, so it's everything that she's ever known is gone. And so Lynn is getting Jennifer, because, Jennifer's in the same situation. Jennifer... It's a meta, plus she's the same age as Wendy, technically speaking, and to kind of give her the ropes and kind of show her that she's not really alone. And, it's interesting because, when it was all said and done, Lynn kind of stepped to Odell because he's like, oh, should we go back to her training? He's like, no, you almost killed her. She's going to get therapy. She's going to go to school. She's going to learn to, do this and that. She's going to have some semblance of a normal life. Then you can make her your soldier. But at the very least, give her time to breathe, to be healthy and happy. And Odell backed down. So I was wondering, my thought was, did he do that because he knows, in the end, I'm going to win anyway because I got this information on your family? You bark and kind of give orders now, but sooner or later, I'm gonna shut that all down? Or is it because for him, it's he heard the conversation between Lynn and Jennifer, and it made him go okay, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, essentially. So the whole thing of maybe it's a situation of, by allowing Lynn to go through her approach, it's I see that Jennifer is kind of a little bit more under the control. Maybe that motherly instinct is what we need here to kind of make Wendy more weaponizable, essentially. So maybe let Lynn do what she needs to do. That way it's hey, I get what I want to in the end anyway, but I kind of get a more controlled her, because if Lynn can handle the more keeping her stable and stuff like that, then no matter how much we push her, she'll be ready to kind of embrace it and take it on type of situation. That's what I'm thinking. So her motherly instincts with Jennifer, who is also a metahuman, I think that's what shifted his perspective on it, because he just changed his tune, because before he kind of shut her up and shut her down before, but now it's he's the one that got shut up and shut down. He's like, no, okay, you win. And even Lynn kind of had a look wait, really? Is it that easy? And speaking of looks, I love it. Obviously, we've Cutter and Jace and Tobias end up waking the other three metas. Joe, who is a pyrokinesis, and Darrow, who has the cryokinesis. And then you have Rebecca, which it seems her power is very interesting, because it seems not only can she summon and control water, it's more so summon water. It doesn't necessarily seem like it's necessarily control it. It seems but from what we saw from a little bit in the way they described her power, it seems like she can actually turn herself into water, which I thought was kind of interesting. But nevertheless, but I love the fact is that Cutter ended up cutting Marcus, because he's I ain't gonna go do no training and stuff like that. I can handle all this stuff, blah blah blah. But it's yeah, but you, and I love that, even though it pissed Tobias off, but he was I hate to admit it, but Black Lightning and Thunder would take you down easily. You're not even worthy enough to lick their boots or something like that. And it's that's kind of interesting. He has to give major props to his enemies, his arch nemesis. But I love that he tried to step to Tobias and cutting his throat, and she did it super fast too, and her and Tobias getting all cute and kissing and stuff, and you see Jace have that disgusted look on her face, and you have Joe over there looking I don't know, it was just kind of interesting. It don't necessarily seem like Jace is into Tobias, but it's more so like she feels like Cutter's kind of more of the middle ground, which kind of makes me get the feeling like Cutter might end up dying. I mean, she ended up dying. That probably just pissed Tobias off more. I mean, we saw what happened. Like, he literally lost everyone. He lost his sister and his right hand man and his left hand gal. So it's kind of like, I'm sure like he'd probably break even more if something happened to Cutter. But the fact is that, like, because Jace is being like, oh, I'm the brains of the operation, but you're a genius at survival. We put our heads together, we be unstoppable. But it's like, nah, he's more so into having like Cutter his right hand gal. And I think that's also because it's like, well, he's got his feelings mixed up into the situation as well. It's not just him being pragmatic. So that was just kind of interesting. Like I said, I kind of almost feel like Jace might do something to Cutter, might make it seem like someone else did it just to kind of get her out the way, because this way she can be the one kind of, I don't know, it seems like she wants to take advantage of this situation too, but I guess for her it's more so like, oh, I gotta find my place, I gotta find something to do, find some place. Because obviously the moment she stops being useful, Tobias is going to kill her anyway, just like it did Todd, so there's that whole situation. So other interesting things we learned this episode was that Anissa finally pieced it together about Grace, because it turns out, hey, shapeshifter. So it is interesting. Like I had brought up before, I wasn't really sure what you would classify Grace's ability, the whole like being able to go from human to animal, which still not 100% sure about the whole half-eaten horse situation. Like the way Gamby was talking about it, almost describing it, almost seemed like, oh, she was in a horse form before. She kind of did a Supernatural, the TV show, Skinwalker situation of like they shed their skin. It almost like looked like it's like, oh, maybe she turned into a horse. Maybe it's a situation of like she has this little itch, or like her body needs to transform every once in a while, and it like leads her to kind of losing control. Like the fact is like at the very least she has to stay transformed for a period of time. So I don't know. That's just me making that up. I don't know if that's true or not. But like I thought that was kind of like her shed skin from like the horse she had been disguised as. But I think, like I said before, maybe it's the more animalistic side of things that was hungry, and so she can't 100% control it without her medication and stuff, so she needed something to eat. So it still don't explain how she managed to get the horse down there. So it might be the whole situation of she transformed into a horse and she does shed this skin like a skinwalker from because like I said, that's what it seemed like Gamby was describing, but I wasn't 100% sure about that. But now goes into the whole aspect of breaking rule number 1, because now Anissa's like, okay, I'm going to tell Grace, because Grace didn't think she can trust me. She thought I'd look at her a little differently, but it's like, if she knew who I really am, she realized like we're in the same boat. She's a metahuman and everything. But once again, it comes back to the conversation of, man, what was her situation like? I mean, we learned a little bit about Grace's past, but we never found out in that point, like obviously like how she became a metahuman. And speaking of metahuman, sadly we had that aspect to this episode, the whole Cape guy thing. That's super sad, because for him it's like, oh, it turns out like he had I forgot what they were saying. I think it was like PTSD or something like that he was suffering from, and he was dealing with it because he was formerly in the military, and he dealt with it by getting green light, but he had the powers and everything, and he was trying to explain to the cops, like, oh, I'm one of you, and they ended up shooting and killing him. I'm like, jeez, that sucks, because I thought he was just going, well, it seemed like he was doing it partially because it does seem like he was trying to go out there in the streets. He had these powers and everything, and he just wanted to do some good, try to be a hero like Black Lightning, and ended up getting killed for it. And I was just sad, dude, because the whole metahuman thing has got a lot of people freaked out, because a lot of metahumans have kind of gone crazy, erupted all over the place, caused a lot of damage. I mean, we had Joe literally going on a rampage, even going as far as killing Councilman Parker, which, to be fair, that makes sense, because it's like, oh, why would he do it? It's like, well, yeah, Tobias completely covering his tracks, because the last thing he needs or wants, because obviously he already took care of Todd, so it's like, let's get rid of the other people who know a lot of more stuff about what I'm up to and what I have planned and stuff like that. We haven't seen him kind of contact Councilman Parker in a very long time, but I guess that's a loose end that needed to be taken care of. I mean, just like he killed one of his OG crew from back when he killed Jeff's dad. So, like I said, he completely cleaned house before, and doing even more so now. Then you have the whole Lala situation, which is interesting, because I didn't remember that dude who resurrected Lala from season 1, but I'm guessing, because it seems like he has a connection to Lady Eve, he cared about her, but she kind of gave him focus into his own work and stuff like that, gave him a place to kind of craft his whole situation. Also seems like he was talking about it, he brings back other things other than people, just for the purpose of like, oh yeah, by doing this I'm able to kind of practice and get better at my craft and stuff like that. But telling Lala, it's like, you need to kill Tobias, because because like literally, and I love that though, that shows you how much of a bad guy he is. Literally everyone wants Tobias dead. Lala wants him dead. Jeff would want him dead. It's like, yes, you can say like that. I think that's the thing. It's like killing him would be the easiest thing to do, but that's not what heroes do, because killing him would make you no better than him, and it's just, it's just an endless cycle. It's just like justice isn't garnished that way. I mean, because Jeff knows more so than anyone. He wanted to kill Tobias. It took Gambi kind of pulling him back to be like, no, this isn't a right move to make. It isn't the right thing to do. You're heroes. You're, held to a higher standard, not just by people, but by yourselves, because as heroes, you have to kind of lead by example. It's like, it's not the easiest thing. But who said being a hero would be easy? It comes with its challenges, challenges, your own morals, and, can you put the greater good above your own need for revenge, essentially, But he's the one that's telling Lala that when it's all said and done, he'll kind of find peace. And he's like, the fact of the matter is, no matter how much it's going to take, like, even if, you have the rare aspect of, like, even if you die, you can always come back. I mean, granted, it's going to hurt to die and come back and die and return and die. But still, you'll learn from it, you'll grow, and you'll get Tobias in the end. I mean, at the end of the day, it almost seems like, are you necessarily helping Lala, or are you more so helping yourself because you need revenge against Tobias? But I guess it's kind of like, why do they have to be mutually exclusive? Why can't, our goals align, essentially? So that was just kind of interesting. I'm curious to see anyone else he ends up potentially resurrecting. I mean, like I said, we see other people or other things happening in those other tubes, but we're not really tackling, so it's going to be interesting, because obviously, like, Lala going after Tobias is the one that kind of helped make him into what he is right now. He got to set that all in motion, so it's just kind of, it'd be ironic. I get the feeling when it's all said and done, maybe I'm wrong. Like, it's going to be interesting to see what, because obviously Jennifer is going to be intent on killing him. She actually tries to attempt to this episode. Not a full-on attempt, but, getting in position to attempt to. But then you have, Lala showing up and Cutter's throwing those knives at him, but that's not slowing him down one bit. Well, it does, but he keeps on trudging along. But it'd be, I think it might be a situation where Jeff shows up and tries to stop Lala. This might be Jeff breaking his rule, because he might reveal himself to be Black Lightning to Lala to get him to stop, potentially. That might be potentially what happens. Or maybe Lala will outright end up killing Tobias, and it just kind of all evens out. Because that way, he's dead, but Jennifer doesn't have to carry the weight of being the one who did it. I mean, she may even be pissed for a while because she wasn't the one that did it. It's like, it was supposed to be me, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening in that regard. We do see at the end, though, that Jennifer is overpowered just because the suit isn't ready. Plus, the fact is she's, like, her emotions are heightened and she's just angry, so that's just fueling things even more. But with the amount of energy that she's capable of producing, I mean, obviously there's the gloves there to kind of absorb energy, but still, it's a situation of things could get very bad. And I think this might put things in perspective of Jennifer, of being like, the fact is, you doing what you did just now wasn't just about killing Tobias. You could have gotten a lot of people in this city hurt. You could have caused a lot of damage, killed people. Once again, that also comes down to whether or not, like, whatever's going down with her right now, like, because she's almost turning into like a nuclear or an atomic bomb, like, with just as much energy she's gathering, stuff like that. Hopefully they'll be able to drain the energy from her before things kind of spiral out of control. So I'm very interested to see where all this is going to take us going forward into the next episode, because the next episode is the season finale. So I'm interested to see how they're going to end up wrapping up this season. I mean, like I said, the army that Tobias is amassing, Marcus is kind of off kilter for a while. Also, side note, we still have not seen Home Dude, who showed up earlier this season. We're like, oh, I got to go to Freeland. Have not seen hide nor hair of him, so I'm assuming we might see him in the season finale. Maybe. Once again, what about Odell? Is he going to make his move in the season finale? We will just have to wait and see. I'm excited to find out what's going to happen. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time, with me, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.